My name is Dr. Jennifer Hazel. I've been a medical doctor for about 8 years. I studied and practiced in the UK, and I moved to Australia to practice emergency medicine, and now I live in New Zealand. I co-founded Checkpoint to provide mental health resources for the gaming community, and we exist to raise awareness, to reduce stigma, and to create and distribute important mental health services to those in need within the gaming community itself. And you can find out more at checkpointorg.com. As a Kiwi organisation, I do want to take just a very quick moment to extend my sorrow and regret for what has happened in Christchurch over the last few days. Thank you for also doing so. So we're going to talk about models of team effectiveness, and the title of this talk is How to Make Games and Influence People, Leading Your Team Effectively and Healthily, which is a mouthful, and on reflection could have just been said by saying how to be an indie leader, but I decided I wanted to be clever, and for some reason the Indie Summit let me run with that. So thank you so much for allowing my neurotic personality. Independent game development, it's an odd beast. It's different to not only the rest of game development as an industry, but other industries in the world. The different models and psychological profiles that we kind of fit ourselves into in other industries are kind of gone and replaced by something a bit more ad hoc, a bit more on the go. Hierarchies are a bit flatter, and everyone is in more intimate, intense contact with one another. So the traditional models, if you were to decide to go and Google some of them, you would get about 5 gazillion of these models of team effectiveness, and most of them become completely redundant to you as indies. Because, I mean, and as you can see, triangles are definitely a core theme, but they all involve different concepts and they're worded in different ways. So here we have, and I'm just going to pop over here to actually read the names. You've got the Rubin, Plovnick, and Fry's GRPI model of team effectiveness, the Kazan, Bach, and Smith model, the T7 model, the LaFasto and Larson model, Hackman model of team effectiveness. That had the word model in twice. I just want to point out, they really wanted to go for that. And then the Lencioni model. So I thought, screw that. I went through every single one, and I noted down in a spreadsheet what themes, concepts, important take-home messages each of these psychological models were giving. And I tallied them up and put them in a handy, nifty graph for you. So there were a few themes that were consistent amongst every single model. There is a very clear theme of interpersonal relationships being exceptionally important in leadership and work dynamics. And what I thought would be the most helpful to you, instead of me standing up here and kind of preaching wax poetic about these psychological concepts, was to make it real, to give you examples that you can actually identify with from people that you respect and who are seen as leaders of the indie community. Talk to them, find out what they say about leadership and leading a team effectively, and then relate that back to the real data. So that's what I did. And we'll start with our good friend, Ryan Clark, who introduced you to this talk. Ryan was really kind to talk to me about what he felt were the top 3 ethical leadership tips. And there, I've summarized the first paragraph in just this very short sentence, but design a company that plays to the strengths of the team. What Ryan actually said was that game design and team leadership have a lot in common with one another. When you design and test a game, you need to be simulating thousands or millions of people in your mind and trying to anticipate what they would be experiencing if they were playing your game. You can't just play it as yourself because you would only optimize it for your own enjoyment. And as a team leader, you can't just pay attention to what you want, the things that make you happy. You have to design your team as though it was like a game project. And I thought it was really interesting that Ryan said that he was designing a company that plays to the strengths of the team instead of the other way round, designing the studio based on the individual's strengths and weaknesses within that studio. There was an aspect of fairness, equity, and reward. Ryan said that at BYG we share profits and have fair wages because we think that's the right thing to do. And there was also this really awesome sentence that I will be using again and again in the future, I think. There are two sides to every statement, what the speaker intended and what the hearer understood. Ideally, the two are ideally the two are identical, but usually they're not. And really, that is feeding back into that interpersonal communication and the interpersonal relationships part of these models, is being able to understand how communication affects each individual in the team on a day-to-day basis. And of course, when your co-workers feel like your teammates rather than your underlings, the results are better for everybody involved. So if we go back to that graph, what Ryan has hit on is interpersonal relationships, organizational factors, accountability roles, and reward. And what I'm going to do now is actually reframe those tips, which were practical, on-the-floor examples, into psychological concepts and explain why that's happening and why it's important to know. Whenever we're managing interaction between two or more individuals, whether it be a colleague, a loved one, or a stranger in the street, the person doing your checkout at the grocery store, no matter who it is, every engagement and every interaction between two people is a negotiation. Each person coming into that interaction has a need. They would like that need to be met. Sometimes those two needs don't necessarily fit together, and it's important when you're in that interaction to be mindful, what is the other person's need? What need are they bringing to this interaction? What is my need? And how can I best satisfy both of those things, even if that might conflict with one another? There's ways that we can start to think about how to do that. One of them is a concept that we use in psychoanalysis, which is called transactional analysis. And that is the concept that in a two-person interaction, both people are taking one of three stances. They're either the adult, the parent, or the child. Now, that doesn't mean literally, obviously. It doesn't mean that you have to be a parent to understand, or you have to have a child. You're not regressing in that interaction. But what this represents is our frame of mind. Because during this interaction, we're unlocking a part of us, usually subconsciously, that is reliving or replaying a past experience. Two adults talking to one another are both in the here and now. They are both having an interaction based on objective fact without a significant amount of emotional weight, and it's something that is relevant to their present situation. They understand each other's needs and are negotiating a way forward. A parent is the authoritarian stance, where someone's like, you will do this, and if you do it good, you get rewards. If you do it badly, you get punishment. And the child can either go into a rebellious or submissive phase. And so the child responds, well, I don't want to do that. Or, okay, sir, I'll do whatever you want. We may start an interaction adult-adult. One person may have a vulnerability due to a variety of factors that often we're not aware of to go into a child state. And in response, the other person then has to make a decision, well, am I going to stay as an adult and try to elevate that person back to adult? Or am I going to go into the parent stage where we're not actually going to achieve anything because we're not having a grown-up communication anymore, we're having a maladaptive interaction? When we become aware of these things, we can design and model our interpersonal interactions to fit what we want out of the situation in a way that gets everybody's needs met. Another model of doing that is called information manipulation theory, which essentially is the concept of only disclosing what is relevant and within the person's capacity to understand. So when you're in a position of leadership, transparency becomes a bit blurry. You're sharing information that is relevant and you're withholding information that could be harmful. So these two models together you can use in order to design your interpersonal relationships as a leader, not only with members of your team, but with people who are on the same level as you. You can also model those interactions to people that are within the team when they're talking to each other. These are two acronyms that have come from dialectical behavioral therapy. And if you take a picture of a slide, take a picture of this one because there's a lot of information on it. They're two models that remind us in the moment how to communicate effectively in a way that meets the needs of both parties involved, especially when the subject matter is difficult. So the Dear Man acronym reminds us to describe our current situation objectively, to express our feelings or opinions about that situation and assert what we are wanting, what our needs are. That might mean saying no. Our need might be, no, I cannot achieve this thing that you're asking me to achieve. We then reward the person for cooperating, or I guess cooperating is not the best word, but for interacting in a way that's mutually beneficial by letting them know what they're going to get out of that negotiation. And be mindful of your objectives without being distracted. And distracted are things like broken record techniques, when someone isn't absorbing the information and so they're saying the same thing over and over again, hoping to get a different response, bringing it back to the present. Appearing effective and competent, even when you don't feel effective and competent. And so that's why I was in a hotel for 5 hours yesterday practicing this talk. So even if I don't feel like I know what I'm talking about, even if I don't feel ready, there's a muscle memory there that's just doing it regardless. Practice, talk to the mirror, talk to your partner, role play. It's really, really good, really effective. And negotiate alternate solutions. The build model is specifically was designed to deal with conflict in the workplace, particularly allegations of bullying and harassment. So this is really, really good model to use if you're in a leadership position and you're having to deal with a team complaint or conflict between two members of your crew. So B is labeling their behavior, not the person. So it's not the person that is bad, the behavior was the thing that was undesirable. Show that you understand why they did it in the context of the situation, and explain to them the impact that that behavior had. Listen to their point of view and offer a different solution. What could they do differently next time? I spoke to Emre Candanese, current COO of Mayday, previously founder and CEO of Opaque Space. He told me that leadership is a form of service, that the leader's role is to remove any barriers that exist to the employee achieving their full potential. That hit a number of these concepts again. This graph will be coming up a lot. That's relevant to goals, to organizational factors, to leadership as an important concept, to accountability and procedures. And I also spoke to an incredible, incredible woman from New Zealand called Zoe Hobson, who's the managing director of Runaway Play. Zoe actually got the Prime Minister of New Zealand to come to their studio to talk about video games, and she was able to convince the Prime Minister of New Zealand that video games are an awesome and valid medium worth investing in. So basically my hero. She said that you should surround yourself with great people whose skills complement yours and trust them. She got a tip from the previous director of Runaway called Tim. She says it sounds simple, but care about your people. Believe and treat people like you are lucky to have them, not that they are lucky to have a job at your company. And that also ties in with something that Ryan said about not saying that people are his team. It's not my programmer, it's not my artist. They're all part of the same team and no one belongs to somebody else. Transparency, be honest and open with the people you lead and they will be honest and open in return. Zoe hit on, again, interpersonal relationships. This is something that every single person consistently brought up. Trust, skills, and commitment. And what both Zoe and Emre were describing was an ethical leadership model. Within this model, you have the light blue in the middle at the bottom there is the team. And the goal is that they feel safe, supported, competent, and motivated. They want to be able to come to work, to know that they're doing a good job, to be rewarded and fulfilled by that job, and to know that there's a future in it. And there's a way of helping them to achieve that, which of course increases productivity. This means surrounding them in containment, surrounding them in things that keep them safe, that keep them motivated, and making sure that that's pervasive throughout the culture of the studio. So accountability and trust being that big overarching theme, you have to be being made accountable for not only what you're doing, but what the team is doing as well. If there is a problem happening, that's your responsibility as the leader. The performance of the team is a product of their environment, and you shape the environment. That might require a bit of rejigging of your perspective about what makes a team functional. If there's one problem person, why is that? Is it that they don't have the resources to do what they need to do? Is it that they were a bad cultural fit for the team? And could your hiring processes be amended to actually account for that in the future? It all comes back to a singular person or group of people taking whole accountability for everything that goes on in the team, never shirking responsibility. Behavioral modeling is an enormously important concept that we do and are influenced by constantly, all day, every day. Have you ever had a friend and you spend so much time together that you start saying their little catchphrases? You start like picking up words and things that they do and using it? That's behavioral modeling. You have taken what you liked about that person and integrated it into your own personality and character. And we do that fluidly, constantly, all the time. When you are in a leadership position, everyone is looking to you to set the example. You have to be the team you want to see. That was a rhyme that I made up on the fly, and I'm quite proud of it. Be the team you want to see. It's that thing about never punishing the behavior you want. So the example being the teenager who's moody and won't come to have dinner with the family, or staying in their bedroom. The one day they come down to the dinner table and the mum or dad says, "Oh, thanks for joining us." That sort of sarcasm and criticism of their good deed is not going to encourage them to do that again. What this person has learned is, well, if I behave in this way, I get punished, but if I behave in this other way, I also get punished. So how do I win here? Be patient and tolerant. Be able to reward good behavior, and instead of punishing behavior that you don't want to see, reframe it, remodel it, and show the people in your team how to be that positive influence. If you've got someone that's always complaining and whinging and bringing negativity to the team meetings or stand-up every day, take what they say and validate it. Say, thank you for bringing that incredible insight. I wonder if we could think about it in this way instead. Or I wonder, could I provide you with this resource that might make it better? And show that you're not engaging and you're not indulging in the complaining, but you're being productive and you're assisting, you're giving them what you can. Other people will copy that. They will take it, they will copy it with each other, and that's how you shape company culture. It comes top down, and it has to, because everybody looks up to ultimately one or a small group of people at the end of the day, and you are going to be what the team needs to become. Curated transparency was a really interesting concept that Emre specifically said, that it's going back to this concept from the interpersonal relationship of the information manipulation theory of only letting people know what they need to know, but having a transparent process. So if they come and ask, you tell them, or if it's appropriate in your company protocols and policies, you tell them, but you're withholding things that are going to cause them undue stress. They don't need to know the nitty-gritty details of the publishing deal. That's not something that's going to help them by increasing their motivation. That's just going to cause them stress and anxiety. And what this is going back to is Herzberg's motivation-hygiene theory. And I don't really like the word hygiene, but apparently hygiene is job satisfaction and motivation is satisfaction. And you would think that job satisfaction and dissatisfaction are just opposites of the same, but they're not. So you can have a very satisfying job but still not like it because there are dissatisfying factors. Or you can have a job that's very dissatisfying, but you still enjoy it because it has satisfaction. They're the same thing, but these two things are different. So minimizing dissatisfaction is what Emery was saying about minimizing barriers that people have to being their best self, minimizing and removing any obstacles that someone has to being productive, to being motivated, and to doing what they need to do in the studio. And that's things like protecting them against discrimination and tackling the disadvantage that they might be seeing. It's accommodating for the variety of things that happen in people's life that they just cannot control for, and importantly, having a mental health protocol. Now, I just did a talk about mental illness representation. The figure is between 25 and 50% of people have a mental health issue at some point in their life. That's huge. That's half your workforce. Have a mental health protocol. If you don't know how to make one, talk to us at Checkpoint, checkpointorg.com or at checkpointorg on Twitter, or just email me. I'll have a gazillion business cards. We've got AAA model manuals, which is our mental health protocol for studios, and it's a self-care guide for developers. Just have it, just think about it, start thinking about it, start that dialogue. Because if you're supporting people's mental health at work, they're gonna feel safe, they're gonna feel competent, they're gonna feel like you care, like give a shit, basically. One of my bosses, when I was working in the emergency department, he was like, look, if I can't teach you anything else, just give a shit. That's all I want you to do, just give a shit. Maximizing satisfaction, much easier. Maintaining goals and directions, ensuring resources are available to the best of your ability, giving responsibility and rewarding achievement. Now, reward doesn't have to be financial, it can just be verbal validation. Just you did a good job can go so far with so many people. You don't know whether they've never heard that before. Just tell people how good they're doing, and they feel like they're doing good. And then, surprise, surprise, they want to do even better. They want to keep going. They want to continue getting that validation. It's a simple thing, but so easy to forget when you're stressed out. Finally, I was thrilled to talk to Blake from League of Geeks. He was very kind to be able to give me some of his wisdom and knowledge. Blake said, have a set of principles that you and your studio stand for, and importantly understand why those are your principles and why you stand by them. Always act, speak, write like you're being watched, recorded, or any other party can hear you. There's only one path to the top of the mountain, and it's not taking the low road. Always take the high road. Surround yourself with intelligent, moral, and caring people. You are the sum of the people you surround yourself with, and you do have control over who you spend your time with, so choose carefully. Blake also gave me a list of bonus advice. Set healthy boundaries, consider risk, plan well, govern responsibility, and never take advantage of anyone. So again, we're hitting things like organizational factors, goals, trust, and importantly, procedures. And what Blake has touched on is a really awesome unified theory of leadership and the psychological approach to leadership called transformational leadership theory. Now, this is part of an overarching concept which is called full-range leadership model. And that includes two other models of leadership. One is called and excuse my French pronunciation, the laissez-faire leadership, and also transactional leadership. Now, laissez-faire means do what you want. Literally, that's what it means in French. It's a model of leadership where the person who is in the leadership position, instead of being in a democracy, instead of saying, well, here are the options, you choose, there are no options, everyone can just do whatever they want all the time. So that's the very loose way of doing it. Transactional leadership is reward and punishment, so transactional being that parent-child model that we were talking about earlier. And transformational leadership is kind of renowned as being the most unified and important, the most beneficial leadership model. It enhances team motivation, morale, and job performance, because essentially what you're doing is you're not creating a company, you're not creating a team, you're creating a collective of people that have a unified identity. You're doing that as the leader. You're helping people to find their individual place in a collective, and you're modeling to them what you feel that that collective should be, essentially creating, like you would design a game, the studio that you want to work in. You have the power to do that, and to me that is really, really cool. I would really, really, really like to thank League of Geeks, Studio Mayday, Runaway, Play, Embrace Yourself Games for contributing to this talk. As I say, we have our self-care guide for game developers here, which is called the AAA model. You can find out more and find more mental health resources at checkpointorg.com. This has been a whirlwind tour of leadership. I hope it was helpful by applying some practical examples of studios that I personally respect from people that I think are the bomb, and bringing them to you and giving you the reasons why in psychological models their advice works. You have the power to do this. You are going to do great. You are going to mold and model the teams around you and make awesome things with awesome people. Thank you for coming. I very much appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jennifer. We have a few minutes for questions. If you'd like to ask Jennifer a question, please come to the mic in the aisle there. And if no one else has one, I will start things off. No, we do. Go ahead.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great talk. So with the models that you're talking about, it feels very classical, hierarchical type of model. I guess with a lot of indies and stuff like that, I guess it's very much like either a band mentality or like, a small group of people. Is there, I guess, models as well that kind of do this kind of pass the baton type of leadership, or kind of like this small collective leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's models for everything that you want there to be a model for. I'm sure someone somewhere has thought about it. The concepts to me are the same. The take-home messages are the same, is that regardless of whether you're in a clear hierarchy and you're at the top of it, or if you're mid-tier or low-tier, or you're in a completely flat hierarchy and everybody's equal, you're still modeling through your actions and behavior what you want to be seen and what you want to be the product of the people around you. So that's something that you can learn not just in a workplace, but in relationships or in a family model. If you treat people the way that you want to be treated, if you treat and behave in the way that you would like to see, people are going to see the benefits of that, and they're going to take as much as they can pieces of that and then reflect it back to you.
Cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
Hello, doctor.
Hi there.
I had a question.
Still feels weird. It's been nearly 10 years.
Oh,
Go
no,
on.
no, of course. I had a question about how you create that sense of safety and trust in your team, and if you have any recommendations on exercises or certain things you can do with your team to build that. Like
trust building and stuff like that? Mm-hmm. Well, look, I mean, I don't know if you have anything to contribute there, Ryan, being the indie leader. I always really, really enjoy mindfulness-based exercises. Mindfulness has like a real strong basis in not only mental health, but just in everyday life. You can reduce stress, reduce anxiety, and make people feel more productive and competent. In terms of trust building, this is just an example from my other life. When being a doctor, we had a team building day where we all just sat around and we had an agenda, and we literally just were able to talk out everything that was bothering us about the current setup and then problem solve together. And because we had people who were in very strong, they were very confident in being that kind of, in a position of everything will be okay, I'm happy to take all of this anxiety, contain it, and then deliver it back to you in a way that is digestible. We were able to work through so much of that, and it does take, you know, someone or multiple someone's taking that role of, well, I'm going to be the one that absorbs everything, and I'm going to be the person that molds what's happening around me. But I mean, that's a very vague example. Ryan?
Yeah, we try to do things together as much as possible. We go on trips and things like that and go to conventions and demo and whatnot together. Some of them are like in exotic places. We've gone recently to Taipei Game Show and to Shanghai and things like that. And it's partly to demo our games and whatnot, but it's also like so that we get to do something together. And afterwards, like, we really nailed that. And it feels good to know that you can rely on the other people in your team and stuff like that. So, you know, just doing stuff together like that and being proud of what you did, I think builds a lot of trust.
Cool. Thank you.
Time for one more.
Hi, so one question I have is related to the interpersonal relationship part, especially working across distributed teams. So we're expanding, we're adding teams across multiple, several continents, and I'm wondering if you had any tips or suggestions in terms of how do you do that, because it's different when you're in the office, obviously, or in the same geographic area. You can get together, you can go for drinks, it's much easier to organize those sort of things, but I'm curious to hear your insights if you had any recommendations on how to maintain those interpersonal relationships more effectively across different geographies.
In terms of you've got a digital relationship. So Checkpoint exists digitally. Our team is spread out. I live in Wellington, New Zealand. My incredible colleague, Pradika, lives in Melbourne. She's just there and I love her and she's amazing, but you can't have her, she's mine, sorry. And we have a variety of other members that some live in rural Victoria and a variety of places in Australia and the US. And we used to just get on with stuff and it just wasn't working as well as now we have online stand-ups twice a week, where we all make the effort, despite what time zone we're in, to be there and talk to each other, and having that consistency for us was really helpful, of just like, we are going to do this right now, and then it becomes, I mean, we see each other at cons and stuff, but those interpersonal relationships still get played out. It just gets played out in a slightly different way, and it's finding how you can apply these same things but in the digital interactions, and it still happens exactly the same. It's hard. It's not easy. I acknowledge that for sure. Again, have you got any response to that?
Sorry, I didn't think of anything for that one.
No worries. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Make sure that you fill out your email surveys to let Jennifer know what you thought. Thanks so much, Jennifer.